best. And tonight on The Story, we begin in the coastal town of Cannon Beach. This small, close-knit community is divided over who has the power to decide how large infrastructure projects are paid for.
Democracy is built on voting and community participation.
It, by definition, just hamstrings the city.
How two competing ballot measures are now at the center of this citywide dispute. It's our big story tonight. There are always two sides in a debate, and in the city of Cannon Beach, that divide is certainly on display.
I'm sorry that it's come to this, I really am.
Just pick a street and you'll see it.
We're very politically engaged. That's a good thing. I'd rather it not be so divisive.
May 20th is the regular district election in Clatsop County. Specific to Cannon Beach are two opposing ballot measures, 4-235 and 4-236. The first, 235, was a result of a citizen petition. It would require a public vote for all city projects over $6.5 million that are funded by non-emergency debts, bonds, or financing agreements.
This ballot measure was, a response to city leaders not giving a vote to the projects that got proposed last summer.
Randy Neal, a member of Cannon Beach Together, a political action committee, was behind the initiative.
The only way we can have a vote going forward for anything in the future will be if we, modify the city charter.
In response, City Council created a competing ballot measure, 4-236. It would allow Council to approve funding for large projects without a public vote, except when that funding would increase property taxes. This is essentially what happens now.
Well, the status quo in Cannon Beach is great.
Almost everyone who works and lives in the city has a take, and they're ready to share it.
Yes, 235.
Hannah Bushard, who owns Seabreeze Court, is in favor of Measure 235.
And so this will give the voters an opportunity to have more of a say in what happens in our community.
Something she says is not part of the status quo.
It's really discouraging to feel that the elected officials don't really consider your thoughts and opinions when they're making decisions.
So that's part of actually why I ended up running for city council.
Eric Ostrander, elected this past November, is one of the only councilors in support of the measure that would effectively take power away from council.
The community cares, and they want to be educated on what's going on with the large projects.
Projects like renovating City Hall, the police department, and the local school.
I think that we all live in this community, and we should be able to have a say in what sorts of things are happening in our town.
I think it's dangerous.
Gary Hayes is among the city councilors against the push to require a public vote on spending for large projects.
So I understand why people would feel that way, because it just seems, like a very democratic thing to do. But it can create unintended consequences.
This is actually going to hamstring the city.
Councilor Lisa Kerr believes a vote could take Cannon Beach out of the running for competitive grants.
If you aren't ready to go when you get a grant, you can't tell your grantor, oh, sorry, we have to have an election before we can decide if we can accept this money. Because there's 20 other people behind you vying for that same grant.
Elections in Cannon Beach are held 4 times a year and require 90 days notice. Some also require the city to pay election fees.
I think that ballot measure 4-235 is a sheep in wolf's clothing. It's absolutely really bad for our city.
Bob Attia, who's lived in Cannon Beach for 7 years, is especially concerned about an expensive project already in the works to safeguard the city's water supply in the event of a major natural disaster. That project could be at risk, he says, if Measure 235 passes and a public vote is required to fund it.
We're not going to be able to get low-interest loans and grants for funding our big projects. We're going to be dead in the water. Not going to be able to do it.
Projects of this size take years to develop, get the budget, get the designs, get the community involvement, and we have plenty of time to bake in a vote.
Well, I feel very sad.
Mayor Barb Knopp sees the divide reaching deeper than money.
I have worked really hard as mayor to try to bridge the gap between the divisions in the community, and I feel like I failed.
Still, Mayor Knopp is against Measure 235, arguing that if asked to vote on funding for complex projects, residents won't be prepared.
I don't think the average citizen has any idea how long it takes to make an informed decision on major city projects.
If you're afraid to have somebody vote on it because you think they're not going to know what's going on, you just need to get out in the community and educate them.
The mayor says no matter what happens with this vote next week, there will always be the opportunity for public comment on big projects, which she says does impact her decision making. However, many who work in town and are in favor of ballot measure 235 don't agree and say not being heard is the main reason they're pushing for this in the first place. Those against it also arguing semantics in the wording of the measure, namely its lack of defining what a project is. Now, Election Day is May 20th, 8 days away, and we'll be watching how this all unfolds. But first, we want to hear from you. Even if you're not a Cannon Beach resident, we know a lot of you visit the area. Who do you think should have a final say on funding big projects? The councilors elected to lead the city, or should the public get a chance to vote? Email us at thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Now, while we're talking about measures on the ballot next week, voters in the city of Portland will decide on the largest bond ever for Portland Public Schools in the neighborhood of $1.8 billion. Voters approved a bond for PPS back in 2020, which put $60 million towards construction of a center for Black student excellence. 5 years later, the project is barely off the ground, and now dozens of local organizations are calling on PPS to speed it up. Here's Thomas Schultz with the update.
In a letter to Portland Public, more than 35 organizations, including the Center for Black Excellence and the Portland NAACP, are asking for a clear timeline for when certain checkpoints will be reached. By May 20th, they want to see a public presentation detailing when a site will be chosen for the Center for Black Student Excellence. By December, they want that site to be purchased by the district. And this is a project that's made little progress over the past 5 years. As part of the 2020 bond measure, Portland Public Schools asked taxpayers for $60 million to build this center. It's intended to be a place where kids, especially Black children, can grow and make the district more equitable. But since receiving taxpayer money, little progress has been made. It's still unclear where the center will be located and how much it'll cost to run. In the letter, the coalition writes, "This is not only a matter of justice for our children. Fulfilling the district's promises made to Portland students, families, educators, and taxpayers is a matter of public trust and governmental accountability." In March, we spoke to Portland Public Board Chair Eddie Wong. He says COVID, a teacher strike, and a change in superintendents delayed the project. Building material is more expensive too. Still, families in support of this project are growing increasingly frustrated.
You know, let's be honest, I wish there was more progress made. The longer we wait, the more expensive things get.
It's not moving as quickly as we would hope.
Now, Portland Public Schools does say changes are coming under new Superintendent Kimberly Armstrong. Still, this coalition of nonprofits wants to see immediate action. Thomas Schultz, KGW News.
At a board meeting last week, Superintendent Armstrong said the district is negotiating for a property in the city. She alluded to a location somewhere in Northeast. No word yet on the exact location. She said she plans to respond to that letter Thomas just told us about sometime this week.
Well, apparently I guess they say we can't live here no more, you know? I mean, they do the same thing they do all the time.
It's the cycle of street life in Portland. This morning, a large homeless camp on Swan Island was cleared. People staying there tell me they had been there for about 5 years. Swan Island is along the Willamette River in North Portland. The camp was on private property behind a FedEx shipping center and next to Union Pacific Railroad tracks. Homeless people told me their pets were killed when crews bulldozed the camp debris.
They let these people kill our cat inside there. They killed my cat.
They smashed them. The kittens were inside the rubber over there.
Law enforcement was there during the removal. Portland police, along with Union Pacific Police, were told they showed up for security reasons. And those boulders there were being dropped in the area to discourage people from setting up camp in the same spot.
We don't want to live like this. We don't want to stay in homes like this. This is not our plan. This is not our goal. We don't like this, but what choice do we have?
A spokesperson for FedEx sent us the following statement, saying in part, "The safety of our team members, customers, and communities we serve is of the utmost importance to FedEx. We worked with Union Pacific Railroad to safely remove the encampment. This action was taken after camp removal signs were posted and the date verbally communicated to members of the camp."
Honestly, I just want to sit there and tell them, what do you want from me? What do you want? I mean, I try to do it your way. I try to do the programs, but you want me to pay a fee that I don't have no money to pay for a bed that I'm not even using. You tell me I got to be sober to take these programs. I'm sorry, but I've been dealing with my addiction for a long time. I want to get rid of this addiction. I need help, but you want me to do it your way.
Those staying there tell me outreach workers had been visiting the camp in recent weeks.
They've been coming here saying, we're going to find you a place to live. We're going to help you, but they don't do nothing. The police is supposed to here to help. They're not helping.
They told me they were not offered any shelter or services today. Some plan to camp on a nearby beach, while others said those boulders won't stop them from coming back. Now, while the city was not part of this removal since it was on private property, Mayor Keith Wilson has expressed that he wants to put an end to camp removals that just push people from block to block. Well, so far that change has not happened. In fact, in his proposed budget released last week, Mayor Wilson included $16 million for homeless camp removals, similar to this one. Well, the Oregon Government Ethics Commission increased the fine against former Secretary of State Shemia Fagan for taking a job with a cannabis company and for being reimbursed for certain travel expenses. Early last week, the commission appeared to settle the case with Fagan, ordering her to pay a $1,600 fine. But in the final meeting, commissioners decided that was not harsh enough, especially given the position she held.
But I also do want to make sure that we look at this and put it in context to what happened, and I just agree with Commissioner Mason in that I think we need to make some really serious considerations about some of the penalties here because of the position that was held as Secretary of State for Oregon, and that is definitely weighs into this. This is not just this is one of the top officials of our state.
In the end, the commission more than doubled the fine to $3,600. Fagan apologized for the scandal.
For most of 2023, I have imagined the chance to sit here and defend myself. And then I spent the last 2 years in bittersweet reflection on my time in politics. And now I'm sitting here. And I know that my actions were indefensible. Embarrassing mistakes, bad judgment, and I'm sorry. And so whatever fine you decide to impose on me today, I will accept it.
Well, coming up next on the story, as wildfire season approaches, new research from Oregon State is highlighting the dangers of smoky skies and poor air quality, and how climate change plays a role. The study, plus we'll check in with Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino when the story returns. Well, this year's wildfire season is expected to be just as bad as last year's, which means smoky skies and poor air quality. And according to new research, that air quality has been leading to more deaths all across the country, thanks to smoke and particulate matter that can get deep into your lungs. Meteorologist Joe Ranieri has the story.
This scene is becoming more common as wildfires burn hotter and longer in the Pacific Northwest and across the country. Now, research is showing just how deadly these conditions can be if you're exposed to them for a long period of time.
It's smoke, fine particulate matter. So there's, in general, you've heard air pollution problems.
Bev Law is a professor of global change biology at Oregon State University. In first-of-its-kind research, Law found that more people are dying because our warming climate is causing fire to emit higher amounts of fine particulate matter into the air.
You look at the link between climate change and increased burn area, as well as the link between the smoke PM2.5 and human mortality.
The research looked at a 15-year period starting back in 2006 through 2020.
The vulnerable people are the young and the old, and people with pre-existing conditions.
They found more than 160,000 people died from fine particulate matter during that time frame.
That's more than what you would get in hurricanes, or we've observed in hurricanes and et cetera. That's a rate, it's per 100,000 people.
From this research, they found the average annual death rate from people dying was about 5 per 100,000 people from the fine particulate matter.
What happens is when you breathe in the smoke, it goes way deep into your lungs and can get into the bloodstream. And that's really bad. That's what fine particulate matter is, why it's so dangerous.
A very dangerous part of climate change that caused problems long after the smoke has cleared. Joe Ranieri, KGW News.
Well, Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino joins us now. Matt, some concerning research there ahead of wildfire season.
Yeah, really eye-opening. And anybody who was here during 2020 remembers how thick that smoke was and how nasty it was just to be outside. And we are seeing changes in the number of what we call fire weather days. Those are days where it's hot, it's windy, and it's dry, or a certain combination of those three weather factors that lead to days where fire behavior is likely to be more erratic, and then you're likely to just get wildfires growing in size. Now, if we zoom in on this, in Oregon, we're not faring too badly in Western Oregon, only a couple days more compared to back in 1973, but much of the West seeing double-digit changes in the number of fire weather days as our climate continues to change, especially the desert Southwest down into Texas and the deserts of California too. So that's one thing that's happening. We're seeing more days that are susceptible to fire growth because of the hot, dry, and occasionally windy weather. We're also seeing more days in spring right here in Portland. This is put together by our friends at Climate Central that are above average. Now, if you think about this for perspective, you go through any given season, you're going to have a number of days that are above average, a number of days that are below average. And if things were to work out statistically, you'd get half and half of each, right? But back in 1970, we had roughly 20, 30, 35 days of above average days in spring, right? You figure you got about 90 spring days over a 3-month period. If you average this out, that's what this black line is. We've seen an increase in the number of days in spring that are above average in temperature here in Portland by 2 weeks. That's 14 days. So that's a lot of days where we're seeing above average temperatures. How have we fared so far this spring? Well, look at this. Don't worry about the numbers. I know that can be a little bit much to take in. But just look at the colors. The red boxes, Blair, are days where we had above average temperatures. Blue are days where we had below average temperatures. 21 of the 30 days in April, we had above average temperatures. What about May so far? 8 of our first 12 days of May, we've had above average temperatures, several of them well above average. So if you add together April and our first 12 days of May, we're running at about 70% of our days being above average. That, of course, is a lot more than what you would expect statistically. So it's the deck is just stacked towards above average temperatures. And as we look at our forecast, May, June, July from the Climate Prediction Center, the outlook is for better than average chances of above average temperatures throughout the West, including most of Oregon. So
quick question here, Matt.
Yes,
so above average temperatures, does that mean it's a higher risk of wildfires, or is there other factors that have to contribute to being more at risk for wildfire? Is it just the temperature?
No, there are absolutely other factors that factor in. In fact, that first graphic I showed of the increase in fire weather days, they looked at a combination of days that had above average temperatures, days that had below average humidity, and days with above average wind. That's what we consider a fire weather day. So just because you have, it's a great point, just because you have above average temperatures doesn't mean you're going to have more fire days, but it does mean that fires have a better and easier chance of starting and sustaining themselves and growing and becoming the big conflagrations that have really decimated parts of our state over the last 5 to 10 years. So all of this is to say that weather has a big impact, and we're seeing way more days with above average temperatures as compared to below average temperatures. If I was here showing you maps showing, hey, look at all the below average temperature days we've had, then we'd be talking about a different thing, but we're just not seeing that.
All right, Matt, thanks so much.
You bet.
Well, coming up next on the story, we head into the KGW vault to take you back in time to May 1980 and the days leading up to the eruption of Mount St. Helens. What scientists were saying is the mountain began to rumble. That's when the story returns. Well, Sunday, May 18th, marks the 45th anniversary of the eruption of Mount St. Helens. No doubt a defining natural disaster here in the Northwest. All this week here on The Story, we head into the KGW vault to bring you segments that we aired 45 years ago, leading up to that unforgettable day. We begin tonight with reporter John Tuttle and some eerie foreshadowing on May 2nd, 1980.
Remember this pretty white mountain? 43 days ago, the Newport Observatory in Newport, Washington reported a minor earthquake on St. Helens, a quake so minor it was only detected by instruments. 3 days later, the mountain was shaking regularly, every few minutes, and scientists began to remind us that St. Helens was a volcano, and as unthinkable as it might seem, the mountain could erupt. Roadblocks were set up on the highways into the resort areas. Residents were warned of possible dangers, and the Pacific Northwest was introduced to Harry Truman.
They say that the mountain is supposed to erupt and the Forest Service is going to evacuate and do all that stuff yesterday, but I didn't believe any of it. I'm not going to leave here because I'm the only one up here. There's nobody else who lives up here in the wintertime. So it's going to have to run Truman off this lake, and I'm not going to go.
Thursday, March 28th, KGW's cameras were the first to spot this. A crater had appeared on the summit of St. Helens, and steam and ash were spewing out. Each clear day, we'd return to see something changed on the mountain. For a time, there were 2 craters. Then they merged into one giant hole that grew deeper by the day. A new phrase appeared in our reports, harmonic tremor, the geologist's term for the signs of molten rock moving within the mountain. Harmonic tremors were the harbingers of a lava eruption we were beginning to expect. In 43 days, the clean white mountain we remember has turned to this, ash dark and cratered at the summit, and the north side cracked and distorted by ominous bulges. It is a no man's land of sulfur fumes and earthquakes, with a devastating avalanche predicted on the north face. The last time St. Helens awoke, the volcanic activity went on for half a century. In just 43 days, we've seen all this, and yet it all could be only the prelude. John Tuttle, News 8.
Well, since we don't have a show on the actual anniversary this Sunday, be sure to tune into it Friday night here at 6:30 for a special coverage that you will not want to miss. Well, that's the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. Straight Talk is coming your way next. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. Have a great Monday night. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.